As we move into the World Economic Forum, because this is one of my favorite weeks, because a lot of crazy stuff comes out of this. We got some funny. Let's start with this one right here. It's just I think everyone should know from Mario Nafal on Twitter. The sex workers have been fully booked at Davos this week. This year's WEF meeting at Davos appears to be heading in the usual direction of drug-fueled bunga sex parties. bunga. Local escort service website officially announced all local service providers are completely booked during the WEF week. Also, the WEF's 2024 theme is rebuilding trust.
Wow. We're just like you.
Wow.
You can have faith in us.
Yeah.
These are the global elite, everybody. Global elite.
And you know that stuff is illegal, but not when they do it.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I think if you haven't gotten a chance to attend a World Economic Forum event, this is kind of what you're missing out right here. This is what you're missing out on. Elon just wanted to just let you know, wow, I didn't know Elizabeth Warren was at Davos.
A turma chaya no cambarro anuri, no camai, no camwaka, na anuri, no yuyuá, na warram chinã, vupanque, tu chinã chaval aqui, chinã mukikirani, tsai chavakirani, tsai mukikirani. Awama wanana, no mau no wai sharai.
All right, not to be disrespectful, but Omicron variant is a thing.
Dude, I know. Who tweeted like,
This is like a
I
blessing.
can't believe like we just got out of COVID and now they literally have someone coughing directly in their faces.
But you get the point.
Well,
you get the
I mean,
point.
And cool ceremony, you know,
who
like
could argue with
right
that?
on.
Well, it was just there's something weird going on at Davos, right? And
Always.
it maintains the weirdness of it. That's like the dress, sometimes it's stuff like that. When they do music, which showed some of the music from previous years, there's like they're trying to build culture, right? And they're trying to do so in like these virtue signaling ways that come off so strange to everyday people who are watching and be like, it's a bunch of white dudes. And they're going to have this person get up there and do that. Like, there's something weird going on. They're trying to like shelter themselves with that, like prevent them from being criticized by that. I don't know what is the real goal here.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to cloak themselves in the robe of diversity, right? I think with a lot of this stuff, or I mean, and obviously like we only see a little clip of this. We don't know what the full context is. It could have been a really cool ceremonial thing.
No, that was it.
That was pretty much it.
That was it?
That was the whole of it.
All right, well, I retract my argument. That's weird as fuck.
You do that, and then the rest of the time, it's a bunch of rich elites talking about how, and you know me, guys. I'm not the conspiracy theory guy.
You're not?
We are.
And it's a bunch of elites just saying
They all keep coming
horrifying
true, so.
things. Like, check out first up, we got Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission about EU censorship efforts online. Disinformation.
By the way, her name
Klaus?
is Ursula, right?
Yeah,
Let
it's
me
really
go back
Ursula.
to the number one concern of the Global Risk Report: disinformation and misinformation. Tackling this has been our focus since the very beginning of my mandate. With our Digital Services Act, we defined the responsibilities of large internet platforms on the content they promote and propagate, a responsible to children and vulnerable groups targeted by hate speech, but also a responsibility to our societies as a whole. Because the boundary between online and offline is getting thinner and thinner. And the values we cherish offline should also be protected online. And this is even more important in this new era of generative AI. Now, the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report puts artificial intelligence as one of the top potential risks for the next decade.
I mean, just more digital authoritarian stuff. I think.
Right. Like the responsibility they have on what they promote. That what they're talking about is with the things that you make on there. Like, should they boost or not boost something? Should they allow it to spread or not allow it to spread? That's what they're talking about. What they're talking about is whether or not their government should be involved in telling companies what message they should send. And I know they don't have freedom of press in the EU, but as an American, I would say that would be very concerning to me if I was an EU citizen.
Quite, particularly in an age where we are finding that there are more international treaties being suggested and being put into effect that would end up superseding sovereignty of nations that sign on to those things, right? I mean, we could find ourselves very easily underneath some sort of UN initiative where technically, by the virtue of that treaty, we don't have the ability to to protect ourselves against some of those overreaches.
Well, it's more likely to happen, if I understand it right, from the guys that I know in the tech policy space. It's more of a situation where you have a company that's trying to make it as simple as possible, because you have all these jurisdictions. You're an international company, so what you try to do is the most restrained policies tend to be the policy that you implement globally. Because if you're safe there, you're safe everywhere, right?
Sure.
So that's rather than there's a disincentive, like a complexity disincentive, to have it make sense for each individual jurisdiction. So what you tend to do is the most constrained one. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And so the
something before you move on to the next, something that's just interesting is watching Elon signal boost pretty much all of these videos.
Yeah.
Like just the general culture shift and the knowledge share of all of this that is happening now. Because Davos has been around for decades.
For sure.
And
Since
they've been
like the
doing the
70s.
same stuff for a long time. But now regular people are seeing it. And like I was just seeing people being like, is there a place that you can go and watch Davos? I was like, they have a YouTube channel.
Dude,
You
it
can
would
watch
be-
all of the speeches on YouTube.
It'd be great to have it like the Olympics, where you just like have a big screen somewhere and everyone like gets together for like WEF watch parties and stuff. Turn it into some drinking games. It could be a good time.
so it's mostly super boring.
I love how these people are like, I'm really concerned about, what people are doing online. Now let's go to that bunga bunga sex party.
So there was Klaus opened it up with his comments. We can watch the man himself do it.
And just he just looks like a Batman supervillain.
Dude, he is.
It's
He's
partially
a
the
comic book
accent.
character.
It's absolutely the accent.
Us Germans, man.
100%.
I mean, his father was part of the Nazi party, but whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, here's Mr. Klaus.
So steeply transformative challenges, which are actually the cornerstone of our program, lead to uncertainty, generalized fear, and pessimism. They force us into a mode of short-term crisis management at the detriment of long-term strategic and sustainable solutions. This reactionary approach undermines our collective faith in the future. And here we losing the faith of our future, we risk to become much more ego-centered and on a national and individual level. To break this cycle, we need a paradigm shift. We must rebuild trust, and that's actually the theme of our meeting. We have to rebuild trust. Trust in our future, trust in our capacity to overcome challenges, and most importantly, trust in each other.
Oh my God. Reactionary movements go against the faith that's put in our collective future. That's what he said.
He sees collective future as what they're deciding at the WEF, right? Like the elites, their vision for the world. And so he's literally attacking the criticisms of the WEF as that reactionary.
Yeah, but he said the word faith in there like 3 different times in what they're doing, and the religious
Very
element is very
cultish,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it begs the question: whose trust are they trying to regain, or trust in what exactly, right?
The
Because
science.
on one side, it's like you have, as you pointed out, Kyle, this newfound public awareness of the conversations that go on here because of platforms like X, and you have a completely eroded level of trust, if there ever was one, in the public of the competency and ability of these global leaders to actually do what the people want, what is best for the people. So are they trying to regain the trust of that population, or are they trying to, in sort of a twisted sense, make their policies that they want to put forward seem more trustworthy to that population that is very, very skeptical of them?
It might be worth saying, we haven't really explained what the World Economic Forum is, because I think a lot of people have ideas around it. Like, this is the place where people go drink baby's blood or whatever. This is more so the place where they recruit the people to drink baby.
Don't get it twisted.
This is more so the place where they recruit the people to drink the baby's blood. But what the World Economic Forum is like a think tank where they put together a leadership summit where they bring together all the best and brightest minds from around the world, and they act as like an influence mechanism on those people. So that they'll bring them all in, and then they try to influence the ideas of people like Klaus Schwab and try to get them embodied into a culture so that we're all in this together based off of the common goal that we're moving towards, which is this kind of like technocratic progressive society, right? It's probably just worth mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I ask that, or that I kind of position it in that sort of dichotomy of like, what are they trying to rebuild trust in, is because you have conversations like the what was it, Liberate the Science
Liberating
talk.
Yes.
And then you have Javier Milei also speaking. And so I'm wondering, which message are they really trying to amplify?
Well, obviously,
or is Milei just virtue signaling to the people that don't trust them to say, actually, we have people that you like at our conference. You should believe in us.
Well, there's been an increasing amount of vision, eyes on the WEF, right? So with an additional amount of scrutiny, there's been more transparency from them, right? So in the past, these were largely secretive meetings, and they've become more and more open over time in order to let people in on what's going on, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories around it. So I could see them as they're trying to let the air out so that they're not, encouraging bad things to happen,
misinformation,
or people not to know what they're actually doing.
Sure.
Then we actually saw what they're doing, and it became very concerning, right?
Yes.
And so then last year, I know, like last summer, we talked a bunch about the WEF and their meeting at that point, right? When we talked about that, it was like, we're going to eat the bugs and live in pods and all these kind of things is kind of what they said, but not exactly what they said. And there's manipulations that are happening on the internet. But then there's also like, they would say things and then, it would come true. Like, they would be preparing for a pandemic, and then a pandemic happened and everyone responded with trust the science in this very specific mode. And to me, it's mostly about the ideas that they're advancing, right? A very specific vision of what Kyle said, technocracy, where you have elites and professionals, experts in charge who are going to make decisions and lead us into the better, brighter future. So in the previous years, they had things like when you Google and what will happen, right? Those were the kind of discussions in 2022 when it comes to trust in the science. And we actually have this throwback video too.
Yeah, this is from the United Nations saying that we own the science. And this is an older video from the World Economic Forum.
Last year, or 2022.
We partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. But again, it's a huge challenge that I think all sectors of society need to be very active in.
So this is like, what is your model for science? What's your philosophy of the idea of what science should be? Right. And it's a conflict of visions, right? In the soul sense, there's the vision of science as we're going to do one way, and then there's like the classical way. And I think a lot of people think when they hear them say science, they're thinking the classical model of science, which is a spontaneously ordered process where we all compete over the data and the interpretation of the data to better understand the world, right? So they'll use that sometimes, and then they'll actually play a very subtle game to switch out what they actually mean into the technocratic definition, which was introduced during the progressive era that said that we know what to do. We have the science now of how to plan society. So therefore, we need a fourth branch of government that's going to really manage things, and that's how we created the bureaucracy.
It's as if they're using science as a Trojan horse of sorts to just shuttle in their prescription, and science has become a part of like the noble lie. Like we need to just use this research to get the data that we need to show the public that what we're doing is the right thing to do, instead of being informed by the results of an honest interpretation of an honest study.
Right. So they had this thing, Liberating Science was their form that they did. And they had on a science historian from Harvard. And of course, they got into all kinds of discussions about, X, for example. Do you want to do that one first, Kyle?
Yeah, once again, Elon is signal boosting this tweet, right?
Well, did you see the other tweet? He said we considered G, F, and Y.
Yeah, because they're talking about how scary X is as a place because there's all this open dialogue that Elon's allowing.
For a long time, I was on Twitter. And now it's become such a toxic place that I've concluded it's not a worthwhile place to spend time. And as you've said, it is exhausting. So you do have to pick and choose. And you have to think about where the places where you can get your message across. But I am trying to figure out, I have given up on X. What a scary name that even is, right? And I don't know what the alternative is right now. So
the question of the social media, I must say that I have abandoned Twitter too, so X, because it's a toxic environment, and we talk about, I have no solution on that, but I think one day it will come the moment of the code of conduct in these places, because journalists, if you spread crazy news and insults, and if a journalist says racist things, he can be amended.
Exactly.
Why social medias that have such big power, we still can, because it's new, but I think there will be a societal reflection on how information is brought there. Of course, on X now there is also the policy of the owner that is problematic, but I think this is a problem of the society of the future, the deontology in social media.
So a big part of this is they're literally saying this after they said, we need scientists to be better messengers to communicate the truths that we discover in science to the public. And then they go into, and did you know that there are people on X that are totally toxic? What do they mean by toxic? People who say things that aren't true. What do they mean by true? Is their conclusions, right? They are smuggling in their premises under science, and they're using as a cloak to keep them from being criticized, rather than doing that. And there's a great one I released this week to demonstrate this, straight up. And the reason why that's such a great contradiction, right? Because they're using a word, science, the scientific method, as what it was supposed to be was a series, an open process where everyone is going to lay their cards out and show their work. And then anytime you do that in an open system like on X, they don't like that. They don't want to do that. In fact, they have to go to a forum to get their ideas across like this because they couldn't possibly stand that up on X.
Naomi?
Yeah, I'd like to just go back for a minute here, and this is both a yes and comment. So yes, I completely agree, and I think everything you've said about science is really true, and that we have a lot more work to do to explain how science operates and to explain that disagreement among science, as you put it earlier, it's not chaos. That's the process of how we find out the truth about the natural world.
Classic model.
The end part of this, though, is to come back to what Carlos said about agriculture. And this is, I think, really important to understand. And it's a little depressing, but I think if we don't understand it, we can't fix it. So in the case of agriculture, so we know, as you said, agriculture, particularly animal agriculture, is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, a major driver of climate change. So one thing people can do to help, in this case, is to eat less meat. So what are we seeing happening in the United States? The agriculture industry is spreading disinformation. But here's where it gets particularly tricky. Not about climate change. They're spreading disinformation about the public health benefits of a plant-forward diet. So one of the great things about eating less red meat, and you don't have to eliminate it altogether, but just eating less, good for the planet and it's good for your body.
See,
so
exactly.
this is
So
a win-win
she's smuggling
solution,
in
and it's
all of her premises after she just said all this stuff about science and all the things that people would generally understand. So think about COVID for a minute. Think about that minute when there was data released, and then people said, well, wait, this data doesn't suggest that the death rate's very high as we might have thought, and so we should open the economy. And then there was a trending thing of the science says that we need to shut down the economy anyways, and we need to keep shutting down and keep things after the 2 weeks or whatever, because any amounts of death means you just don't love your grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or someone else's grandma.
Yeah. I mean, it was that is the scam, right?
Yeah.
So the steps, a 4-step process. I wrote this down when I was listening to this BS, and then I tweeted it. 1, be a scientist. 2, claim true data that can be verified, right? You can say the earth is warming, whatever. 3, smuggle in your preferred political solution that can't be tested or shouldn't be tested because you've just talked about objective data, such as we need to go on eliminate red meat from the diet. And then 4, what she gets into here is that she eventually criticizes anyone who disagrees, complicates, or challenges your political solution as anti-science, or in this case, as like toxic or whatever. And everyone knows that this is the game. And yet they continue to do this performance theater of they're like, oh, we're just up here just like trying to talk about solutions and all that kind of stuff, while having a complete monoculture up there that doesn't represent anybody, right? That just represents like these weird elitist people.
Well, and the trust the science is just the mantra that they use for the cultish religion, right? It's just like it's like doing the beads on the rosary, just like trust the science, trust the science, trust the science, and you just go through it, and it's like, and you're just like, and then you end it for the greater good, and then you move on, and then off to the sex parties.
Yes, naturally, for the greater good.
For the greater good.
I think that's a really interesting like framework you've designed there, David. And but the one thing I want to push back on is number 2, claim true data that can be validated. I think there's distortions in what she just said there. I think there is a tremendous amount of inflation of the impact that animal agriculture has on the greater phenomenon of climate change or global warming, regardless of what you think about, the greater concept or phenomena therein. And I mean, obviously, I think we'll get into that in some future episodes. But there's a ton of inflation, or they're like magnifying certain things and ignoring whole other things, like the nation of China, for example, has an impact on
Ukraine. How about that?
Yeah, it's like
or never-ending war. In
cow farts, right? For sure, we're going to focus on that. We're going to ignore the fact that China burns more coal than like the rest of the world combined, right?
Right. There's a smuggling in, there's manipulation using statistics, there's all those kind of things, right?
Yes.
We could all point to those, and those are well known. And the thing is, they're not going to increase trust if they simultaneously say we need to increase trust, but we got to make sure people don't believe the wrong things by using government to prevent social media companies from doing things. And then additionally, that we're going to shame people for disagreeing with us about the conclusions of their diets.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, hey, here's the data, and trying to have an actual open dialogue, right? This is an elite group of people who are using government, using lobbying arms, using shame in this case. This lady wrote a book very specifically that says that the history of science that was skeptical of climate change was only motivated by the fossil fuel industry, and it couldn't possibly be motivated by anything else. Right? That's her whole premise. Her entire career is built around that. And they feature her on a stage. They say, take us seriously. We're really interested in opening up and building trust.
Right.
It's completely absurd.
Well, and part of her message too, like something that was in that speech was her talking about the promotion of the idea of meat being healthy. It doesn't matter if that's true or not. Even if it is true, the promotion of that idea brings disinformation about climate change. So we gotta downplay the promotion of eating meat because of it.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter if meat's healthy for you.
Yeah.
It brings skepticism to climate change.
They're always telling us, that don't eat meat, eat the bugs.
Eat the bugs.
Why don't you eat these nuts?
Oh. Yeah, had to.